Friday afternoon, folks. Ted Ralston here in our downtown Honolulu studio, 8th floor of the Pioneer Plaza building overlooking Honolulu on our show, Where the Road Leads. Again, Where the Road Leads this week is in the incredible direction that UAVs have taken us, and we have welcoming our guest here, Chuck Devaney. Chuck has been on the show many times, a charter member of this show, as a matter of fact, on the board of directors of it. And Chuck's got a lot of information for us. You know, in this world of drones, Chuck, there's new information every week. And it's just an incredible experience to be part of this. In fact, just for the benefit of the show here, we had on our guest last week sitting in your place was actually a candidate for hosting the show. We were doing actually an audition, as you are doing today, which you may have not known. And he was kind of good. He was able to keep the ball rolling pretty well, but he couldn't follow the script. So I just offer you, here's the script for today. So
okay.
Just make sure that
I do have one line. Thanks for having me on the show.
And we're done. Thanks very much, Chuck, for being on the show.
It's been a great show. Thank you.
So anyway, after the humor is done, folks, this UAV business is quite serious. And we did talk last week, Chuck, about trying to deconfuse and demystify for the people the whole world of exemptions and authorizations and who can operate legally, who can operate under public aircraft. And it's going to always be a complicated situation. And you're right in the middle of that, which is why you're going overseas to avoid that. So tell us a little bit about what's happening to you in the next couple of weeks.
Well, last time I was on the show, I was getting ready to leave for Brazil, but because of some certain documentation restrictions, some stuff that I didn't have, I wasn't able to leave. So I'm actually going to be taken off in a couple of weeks and going to give it a try again. Yeah, most of the work that I do is outside of the United States, which isn't, by choice. It's just kind of the way things have gone. But it makes it a lot easier because, for example, Bolivia does not have FAA restrictions. So I can go there and operate an unmanned aerial vehicle without having...
So you'll be doing work under the ready-to-drone heading?
Yeah,
okay.
Yep, that'll be a ready-to-drone job.
So when you're out there in Bolivia, people can contact you at ready2drone.com.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's all one string of letters.
It's all one string of letters.
Right there, it says it on the screen.
And we get a lot of work also from another website called flightriot.com.
Flightriot.com.
Yep, and then one other one, some people might be familiar with, conservationdrones.org. It's all kind of one big happy family.
Okay, so and you're all dealing in this case with environmental protection type work? And,
sometimes it's a lot of capacity building. So a lot of it is very environmental driven, climate change driven to some sorts. But what we do is just basically train people how to operate them, safely and reliably and without, injuring any person, property.
So you're building capacity. You're building capacity in the world of drone technology, drone fabrication, analysis of the results, and this sort of thing. Working
exactly.
With the schools and
yeah. So I just show up and kind of familiarize myself with the group, and if I haven't done that already, because I kind of give them a little bit of homework, to get familiarize themselves with the software and whatnot. They've usually purchased a drone, and they have to spend a couple of months staring at it before I actually get there. And I just show up, and we go through the whole entire ecosystem. I teach them a little bit about the maintenance, because it is all open source, readily available to anybody in the world, the stuff that we use anyway. And then we go through a classroom session where we do simulator training, we do a lot of mission planning, go through, like I said, the entire ecosystem of the entire operation. And then we head out into the field, and then it's just repetition, repetition, repetition. Take the airplane apart, put it back together, run a whole entire mission plan. It's about 2 or 3 days of that. And then the final day is the capstone day. So I stand back, I try to keep my mouth shut as much as possible, jump in when I see somebody's about to lose a finger or something, and see if they can execute.
So you have a complete syllabus then, all the way from the classroom learning to the practical experience, and then the leave behind then is that skill now embedded in the population.
Exactly.
And the equipment remains. So people can go off and do the missions as they need without having to call you at that point in time.
Right. And the trick is, a lot of times we're dealing with, developing countries, developing areas that don't have a lot of funding to do this in the beginning. So we want to make it something that they can easily replicate.
That's pretty cool. So is there even a fabrication and a manufacturing function that could be part of this?
I would suppose, but that's just a whole nother level of complexity that we can't really cover in a 5-day span.
Well, certainly, but as a follow-on, you could even get into the local fabrication.
Absolutely.
And optimization for local
Sure.
needs.
They have a good understanding of the maintenance, how to change out certain parts and components. I always welcome them to jump ahead of me at any time, as long as, like I said, they're not going to lose a finger in the process. And sometimes that can be some level of fabrication. But most of the training that I do is predominantly fixed wing.
This is fixed wing aircraft, and rotorcraft is part of it as well?
Yeah, rotorcraft is part of it, but it doesn't take that long to get them going on that.
What is the age range of the groups you typically deal with in these situations?
Oh, anywhere from early 20s to mid 60s.
And their prior schooling is whatever it may be.
Yeah, I've met it. Yeah, it is exactly that. Sometimes I've had instances where people don't even navigate Windows that well. So,
Well, that would be me.
well enough. So, it's just kind of like, teaching them how to move the logs around, to move the data around so they can easily reference it later. But we try to tailor it to
That's a
the
pretty
skill
incredible
level.
thing. So you're basically not going in there as an exploiter or something like that. You're going in there to build local capacity, local understanding, and
Yep.
local ability to modify as they see fit to move forward in a way that's useful to them.
Absolutely. I show them all the resources. I mean, they're
You know,
in multiple languages.
There's a country called the United States where we need that same functionality. We've been kept at bay.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, you've heard of the United States?
heard of
It's
it.
Right, it's on the map.
It's
in
on the
between.
continent, right?
It's somewhere there, yeah. It's, there's water on both sides, and that's the U.S.
I'll look into it. I'll
Yeah,
research
please
it.
do, but I think with
Google
the
it.
things moving forward, with the exemptions we can get in this country to operate and the authorizations, and in coming next year, when the rules change and open up even a wider door, that same level of appreciation and knowledge at the organic level is going to be essentially useful and important, because it is completely largely missing in the U.S. There isn't a clear place to go to get information. It's very confusing. You can go buy something at a store, but you can't deal with it in the larger context that you're talking about. So how do we take your syllabus and bring it into, say, the NDPTC from a disaster training perspective, or the lifeguards and such from a life-saving? How do we take your experience base and repackage it for these other operations in the U.S.?
Probably start by giving me an email or a phone call.
Okay.
And then we would look at your particular application, and then we would tailor a training program that would fit that particular model.
Wow.
Chances are, if you're dealing with professionals, they might have a pretty good understanding of GIS or remote sensing, just depending on, maybe not the lifeguard, but they know about Google Earth, they know about maps. Then it's just operations training predominantly. If that aircraft is designed to lift 4 life rings and drop them out in the surf break during a rescue effort, then we would train them how to do that. Or if it's somebody here who wants to use a particular aircraft to monitor crops in agriculture, devastation after a natural disaster, any one of the million applications that are out there, then we would just tailor that to them.
This is incredible. And is this syllabus you've got and this information you've put together into a training program, is that sort of is it like a United Nations structured system, or how do you, I don't even know how to design an educational program, but the reason I'm asking is, Brendan, I can't remember which is his first, which is his last name, but the guy's great.
Yeah.
He's been on the show, and there's a need to capture what you're doing right here locally. There's interest in Lanai, for example. You met George Purdy and the gang on Lanai. That we want to use what you're doing, if I can suggest, and use it to sort of structure out a program for locally here. And then just today, we got wind that in the Maldives, there's a need to address issues associated with sea level rise and temperature increase. So that, I think there's like 1,000 islands in the Maldives, and they're potentially...
A lot of them are inhabited.
And they're going to get more uninhabited as time goes on, because they're not much
They're going to go underwater. Yeah,
right.
I think that's the whole Pacific.
So using UASs, UAVs, drones, whatever you want to call them, to assist in gathering the information to inform on that project is something that just came across the transom today. So it looks like what you're using, what you already have developed, would be extremely useful as we transfer it to that domain. So I need to introduce you to Brendan.
Yeah.
And to Margot Edwards over at UH. Perhaps you know them already. but I think we're looking at a powwow very soon before you go and before we go. Margie and I are going to California on the 16th, I think, for a conference there called Drone World. And I do want to take some of this conversation to Drone World. But we need to get some time together next week with this larger group and
Absolutely.
have you explain what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's totally
I did not
scalable.
know that, Chuck.
Totally
Seriously,
scalable, yeah.
I was thinking of having you come on here as the host, but now we can use, not only can you be the host, you can also develop the material.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm pretty good at impromptu stuff as
Well, that's good, but you have to be for this show.
Yeah, and it's the same thing goes to any of the training. You never know what you're going to get until you get there, and there's sometimes a language barrier. You got to deal with that. So, but we have a specific outline that we follow, a five-day outline, and then it breaks out to where we have rules and procedures, safety checklists, operational checklists. There's a good nearly 30 pages of stuff that we try to forward.
And you need to be funded for this. I mean, you can't just fly out on your own, or you can't spend time on your own.
Unfortunately, that is the way of things.
So as good as this may
Chuck
be,
has to eat.
if it can't be funded, it can't occur.
No.
So there's a need then
not.
to hook up with, we need to structure this in such a way that 501s or something like that can pick up the ball and take advantage of what you've already done. So we have a way that people who are watching who want to support that can get a hold of Chuck. We've talked about Chuck's email address. But you can also contact the show here. You can tweet at ThinkTechHI, one string of letters there. There you go. It is right there. And all of you out there who want to help Chuck find a way that we can expand this and capitalize on it and make it available to lots of other locations that's what we're here for, folks. This is a public service. Tweet in, right? Tweet in, and we'll get back to you, and we'll raise global awareness. This is an incredible discussion. I did not think, I'm going to get off the script here because I didn't think the conversation was going to get as far as you've taken us, Chuck. But once again, it's incredible how much you've done in the last 4 years since we first met on this basic table here, I guess, and it was downstairs in the basement. But could you imagine where you were 4 years ago to where you are now in terms of the people you met and the awareness you've generated?
Yep, we were flying kites.
Flying kites, right. Flying kites with cameras hanging on them.
With cameras hanging on them, all stabilized, and the whole ball of wax with remote control, with first-person view, tied off to the back of my truck, pulling it down to the beach, and that's how we would get our flight lines. And we actually got really good results. I don't think the kite's completely out.
In fact, that's an interesting point. The wind is going on here these last couple of days. We've no problem with kites.
Perfect.
Yeah,
It'd be perfect.
exactly.
And they stay stable. I know that the geography department still has my old kite set up.
So that brings up a point then. Maybe in this part of this educational program, we need to think of the configurations, that is the aircraft themselves.
Sure.
And the kite has a role here.
It does have a role, and everybody's really platform happy. People get excited when they see multiple rotors. They can hover. They can go fast, they can go slow, they can be stable, but at the end of the day, it's still just something carrying a camera. It's just a skyhook. It's just a platform carrying a camera.
And if a kite can get the job done?
If a kite can get the job done, you're under the radar of the FAA because you're tethered.
There's no authorization required.
There's no authorization required. It's very organic. It's non-invasive, non-intrusive.
Probably not too much fuel on board either.
Not usually. I got away with pretty much the whole entire system with like a small lithium polymer battery. That would just pan and rotate the camera. But it really just boils down to what the information is, what your information need is. As we've always said back in the day, the mission's going to define the platform.
So that's an interesting discussion because, as you say, we've gotten away from that over the last couple of years and gotten back heavily into the fixed wing and the quad rotors. And after the break, we'll talk a little bit about the next evolution in quad rotors, but let's not forget about the kite piece that you came from.
Sure.
That's a really interesting comment. So we'll come back to that point after we take this first break.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. I'm host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which is our flagship show, which plays 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. And the supporters of that show are Hawaii Energy Policy Forum and Hawaii Energy. And luckily enough, we have representatives of both of them right here today to tell you more about what they think about the show. Sharon Moriwaki at my left is co-chair of Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, and she goes first. Sharon?
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. I'm so glad that we have this Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. This was 2 years ago when we started this, and we have continued it because it's so important, and there's so many developments happening across the state. And we hope you'll tune in every Wednesday, 4 to 5. It's wonderful.
And Ray is Hawaii Energy. Ray, what is your thought about the same subject?
Well, I agree completely with Sharon that we are talking about every Wednesday, 4 to 5. We talk about some of the most important subjects that are affecting the islands now and into the future. Energy, clean energy, we need it. We often run into new ideas that we had not thought about before. We did just today, and I think we're going to have more of that in the future. So come on down and watch us 4 to 5 on Wednesdays, and we'll see what happens.
We'll see you then. Aloha.
Aloha.
Friday afternoon, folks, downtown Honolulu. Ted Ralston and our guest Chuck Devaney with you here on the show Where the Road Leads, Think Tech Hawaii Studios. We're the last thing that separates you out there in the audience from your first evening, afternoon cocktail. You got half an hour more, and then we can cut you loose for that. Anyway, Chuck Devaney has been on this show many times. He's on again. And once again, I wanted to let Chuck know this is actually an audition to run this show, because we're looking for a new host. And so if you...
What does that mean, Ted?
Well, you have to figure it out for yourself. But one of the things is important to stay on the script. And I've already failed
Like
at
Jon
that.
Stewart leaving the Tonight Show.
Yeah, it's in the same category. And we did have somebody on last week trying out for the show. We had to send him back to New York because it just wasn't
Oh,
there.
yeah.
You can see that on the YouTube archives and figure out. I won't mention any names here because we don't do that. But what we're talking about on the serious side is this thing is still, in my mind, is bigger than I ever thought we'd talk about at all, let alone in this one show with just one 15-minute episode so far. And that's what you've done, Chuck, to take this whole world of the ecosystem of the UAV or the drone and from an application perspective, turned it into an educational program and have found an avenue to get this information out to the rest of the world here from Hawaii. And there's so many things that are markers of this. It's a leadership function. It's a Hawaii function that is seen elsewhere. It's the basis for building capacity and doing educational programs and such, and growing self-esteem. All these things are consequences of this. And we need that here in Hawaii. We need it on the islands. We need it at the university. And so I gotta shake your hand, man. I'm the last time you were on the show, I said I really learned a lot from you, and I appreciate that, and that is even stronger today, because it just seems like there's more and more leadership that you're showing in this world, world of UAVs, that keeps coming out. So we have to get you on the show a lot.
This is one of my mentors, by the way,
and
telling
actually,
me this.
This is a solicitation to get him to host the show.
I guess it is. I think I figured it all out now.
Okay, right.
I got it.
Okay, did you buy in? All right.
I did, yeah.
So what we were talking about before the break was that we came from working together on kites, and then went from that into various forms of UAVs. And Chuck and I am his partner, I am Bore and Kailua, and Art Castaldi and some others who've been helping the thinking here, have really generated purpose-designed systems that are no longer just off-the-shelf, ready-to-fly systems. You guys have modified these heavily to manage the mission. But this does go back to what you did with the kites. The kites were actually heavily modified from their initial role in order to provide a platform in the sky to record imagery. So what I have been intrigued by is what's on the table here. And this is, in some respects, the next level of evolution in the unmanned air vehicle or small consumer level drones. This is a racing drone. And I picked this up from Mike Elliott, who's been on the show a few times, and it's going to be part of the Ralston fleet very soon, as soon as I give him a check. But what intrigued me when I came across these is the extreme performance margins that the racers have designed in. These are purpose designed to go fast and not care about the wind, not care about vertical or horizontal lateral movements. There's so much performance margin in here that it takes us a step beyond, a state beyond what we do with the conventional fixed wings and rotorcraft. And with all that performance margin, precision operation in very tight, confined environments at very high speed is a consequence. And that leads then to the more rapid need to make decisions accurately and realistically with the goggles to knock out the confusing sunlight factors and people chatting and stuff like that. So you get very rapid development of information. You have to cognate that very quickly and make decisions if you're flying these things by hand. But that high level of performance, both operationally and technically, has got to be useful in the work that you do. So when you go to Bolivia on this next trip, can you please, as you would I'm sure anyway, but think hard about where the higher speed and the higher performance margins available in this kind of a system could be repurposed over in the world of HADR. And the example I'm coming from is what we did a month ago when the racers were here. They were climbing vertically the Ko'olaus up to 2,000 feet, and higher would need no problem at all, 4 at a time. So there's the fluted face of the Ko'olaus, a ridge, and where the waterfalls go. And there's 4 climbing up, then you move over to the next one and come down. Imagine the search and rescue in a situation like that where you just simply can't fly a fixed wing even in that area because of turbulence. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. So this would cover a lot of ground really quickly
Yeah.
in multiple environmental conditions. So like you said, there's a precision factor involved with the pilot being pretty dialed in.
And so there's the speed and the brute force here are worth something in this game.
Absolutely. If you know, time is against you if you're trying to save a life a lot of times.
Right.
How long has that victim been out there? Is it one victim you're looking for? I can imagine putting on a couple different sensors, maybe a thermal sensor and just a regular RGB camera, and just covering some ground. And then with some of the object recognition software that's becoming more and more available
yeah.
that we were talking about before, they're trying to get on board here. As soon as this piece of equipment recognizes what could be a body or a victim, it stops and hovers and reports back its location. Then they can make a confirmation whether or not that is a victim and execute the next phase of the response.
And the fact that it only may have a 5 or 10 minute battery life, at the speed it operates about 80 miles per hour, the speed diminishes the battery life problem.
Sure.
And you could have multiples of these staged in various places. In fact, you could throw this thing out of a helicopter, out of a real manned helicopter, to supplement what the eyes can do.
Right.
And they can be made cheap enough so that if you lose it, it isn't the end of the day.
Exactly. And you could probably scale it up a little bit too. It doesn't have to be
Sure.
this small. You could have something a little bit bigger. It might be able to carry a larger battery so you can stay in the air a little bit longer than 8 minutes for these racers.
We were talking about this with Scott Refland, who's the leader of the Berkeley-based leader of the drone racing community. We were talking about taking this notion of drone racing, which is like a competition, but putting in the middle of it a lifeguard competition or a search and rescue competition.
Absolutely.
And you just suddenly stop the action and say, okay, we got 20 minutes, do what you can to put information together, go find this target sitting out there. And in that discussion, we just did it, we didn't actually do it, we talked about how it might be done, but it could lead to something that is as useful in the world of, we'll say, lost at sea type situations that the lifeguards get into, as useful to them as the jet skis are. Just imagine, 30 years ago when jet skis were a kind of a toy that people bought, and somebody must have scratched their head hard and figure out how useful they'd be in the surf life-saving function. So guys out on the North Shore figured out how to build a sled, and now the world depends on those systems for life-saving.
Yep.
And so as much as the initial thoughts may have been, how would we ever get something like that in our annual budget? Now, the question is, how could we ever not have something like that in our annual budget?
Exactly. And I guess it just, seeking the audience of those individuals that are making those decisions and, making them aware of it.
So you can think about this when you're in Bolivia about how the higher performance margins would be useful. And let's bring that back to the university here and talk
Absolutely.
about how that might
Well, even
might
in
work.
educational programs, I mean, one of these isn't extremely difficult to put together. It comes with a pretty comprehensive set of instructions, and a lot of people that don't have a lot of prior experience are able to put these together to some level of success and fly them, even in an area that has not been exposed to technologies such as this.
Such as the place you're going in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yep, Concepcion is an area that's very much like that. However, I did a remote training, like a 2-hour training via Skype, and those guys picked up everything very quick.
Not only can you train by Skype, you can actually take designs of these elements and just convey the design parameters over Skype or over the cloud, and have a local 3D printer print these things out,
Absolutely.
or a
CNC
carbon fiber cutter,
machine.
machine them out, right? So
Yeah.
you could actually
That's
have
all it
like a
is.
virtual manufacturing operation
Yep.
that has a lot of quickness to it. And
Mm-hmm.
you need a barrel of resin and a roll of glass, and you got yourself a vehicle.
Right.
So-
Yeah, well, maybe not that much, but at least a sheet of carbon fiber.
This discussion we had with the racers when they were here about how a search and rescue life-saving test might come out or example might come out. Here's what it came to in about 5 minutes of conversation. Why not have a pelican case, suitcase-like thing that is transportable by the lifeguard as he shows up for his duty every day, he just carries this thing and puts it down on the beach next to the lifeguard stand. The thing's got a GPS in it so that the pelican case or whatever inside it, which happens to be one of these, happens to know where it is because it's got GPS antenna that's looking up and getting it itself. As soon as there's an issue that since the system knows where it is, it knows what the Google Earth looks like around it, knows what the surf break looks like, and knows what the water circulation looks like. As soon as there's an issue, all the lifeguard's got to do is push an on button, the thing opens up, this thing shoots out, and it does an automatic and very high-speed casing of the joint, so to speak. The logical area is out to, say, 300 yards out in front of the lifeguard stand. And the lifeguard can move it around a bit if he wants, but he doesn't even have to think about it. All he has to do is push the go button.
Yep.
And the thing does the mission. And
Yep.
then returns when it's done, and the second one goes if you need
Yeah,
to.
it would need
So-
to have some sort of like battery management system. If
Certainly,
it's-
right.
Things are going to sit there and be powered up the entire time, or while it's on the ground, it's docked.
But this is the sort of thing that the young kids will figure out, just like the young kids figured out what to do with the jet skis. And so there's this kind of capability put in the hands of the people who are facing the issues, and let them experiment, let them develop.
Yeah, I don't know how young the
Get out of
kids are
their
going to
way.
be. I can't imagine that's that far away.
Yeah.
Everything's
Yeah.
so, exponential in terms of how quickly this technology is moving forward. And people are coming up with more and more ideas.
And that then leads to the other issue. We have a quad rotor here, which is a very common configuration, and we have the fixed wing you're dealing with. As we all know, some composite between them, something that has the aspects of a vertical takeoff and landing and the high performance of a fixed wing is where the industry has to go to. So it'd be great to get these folks you're talking to in Bolivia thinking about that, for example, or the university here. And where are we going to get these configurations from? We just, again, we can't stick forever with the quad rotor or the standard fixed. Certainly of the slow-moving things that are seasonal based, the fixed wing is fine for them because you don't have to be very rapid in your response, and you can put a crew of specialists out there. But things that are high intensity, building fast and are dynamic, really require something that is able to handle all the conditions, and it's probably going to be something with quad
Props,
rotor capability.
yeah, or
props in it somewhere. The tilting.
Yeah, exactly,
nacelles,
kind of
right.
like an Osprey. There are prototypes out there.
So you're going to bring back from Bolivia not only the educational material we can use here, but ideas from them on what might be useful in this environment.
Absolutely. I try to take that away from all of my classes. when I do
I'm
this.
learning from you. As I said, I learned so much from you.
Yeah.
We were just in Iowa a couple weeks ago. We had a conference there called it was the Iowa Homeland Security Annual Conference, and they asked for a briefing. In fact, this was on the table there at Iowa, along with a Instant-Eye, with the people there in emergency management. And one of the interesting, many questions came back. They talked about going to have a low cost of entry. And Iowa said we got to be good for -20 to 120 degrees, 35 knots wind, and because they have to operate in the wintertime as well as
Fahrenheit?
Fahrenheit, yeah. -20 to 120, 35 knots wind. A bunch of criteria that began coming forth. Another one that was a really interesting one that came forth was just how you deploy these. And what you're doing in Bolivia is going to be all about employment and deployment. And so that's really interesting to me, what you come back from. Here in this country, if you think of aerial assets, you think of the helicopters or the fixed wing that go out and do search and rescue today, they're kind of like centrally controlled. So when you think of air function, you think of central control. When you think of something that's as small and portable as this, it's totally decentralized. So the method by which we think about air ops today isn't going to work with these small systems, and the way we deal with small systems isn't going to work for the large central systems.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, not for a while anyway. I mean,
so the ConOps and how this all plays together socially and how the emergency management people can retain a centralized management system with decentralized function. That's going to be a really interesting function. I'll bet you'll learn that faster overseas than you will in this country.
Yeah, probably. They're not going to, they won't have any sort of restrictions for any sort of testing of any system they might be able to develop.
By the way, the host on the show isn't supposed to do monologues. You just experienced about 2 of them. And so I apologize for that.
Well, there's only 2 of us today, so.
Let our audience recover from that.
Yeah.
We'll take a break and then come back in 1 minute.
Aloha, my name is Jim Shawn, and I'm host of a show called Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers. Each week, live streaming at noon on Think Tech Hawaii, we interview people who have special insights into education, from early education through K-12, all the way through higher education and beyond. Both public and private are areas we're interested in. We dig deeper. We try to find out what it's really like to be involved in making change, advocating for it, how you reform, what people's philosophies are in reforming it. As I said, we're live streaming every Wednesday at noon on Think Tech Hawaii. And later on, you can find these interviews on YouTube and on the Hawaii Educational Policy Center website. We hope you join us as many times as possible. Aloha.
Brett Ralston and our guest Chuck Devaney here in the Think Tech Studios overlooking downtown Burbank. Oh, this is Honolulu today,
Juneau.
Right? Juneau, okay. And we're here in Juneau, Hawaii. And Chuck, welcome again. I got to tell
Thanks
you,
for having me, Ted.
I keep getting impressed more and more, and I wish I was as gifted and competent and smart as all you and your peers are. That's not happening, so it's going to be the way it is. Anyway, we've been talking at length about where the future of drones and UAVs might go in the world of environmental management and such, disaster management, and Chuck is heading out to Bolivia shortly. Now, can you recite, Chuck, the instructions you just picked up on this show that you're supposed to come back with after this next experience in Bolivia?
Yeah.
This is a test of
This is a test?
Yeah.
Okay, this is part of the audition?
This is part of the audition,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I'm supposed to go there and establish a knowledge base based on what the client's needs are, and the potential for a vertical takeoff and lift system that also has forward propulsion.
That's kind of a very succinct version of it, but you're also supposed to bring back the user needs as best you can identify them, because we need to put those into a training program here, educational program here, even right here in Honolulu.
Yeah, I was
Or
kind of
Juneau,
vague on
where
that
are
part
we?
of it.
Are we in Juneau? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And so that's great. What do you see, Chuck, as the next evolution of the business model for all this? You know, we talked about we need basically grants to keep 501s going to push this sort of thing out there. What have you thought about or experienced in terms of how this could actually turn into a sustainable business?
Well, first of all, now you have to have your 333 exemption. We've talked about that in previous shows, which, you know, basically lets you operate under public aircraft operations. And, but you still are required to have a licensed pilot, but you are, depending on what you are granted, you can have up to 400 feet, but you still got to stay 500 feet away from congested areas. You got to stay 3 to 5 miles away from different types of airport aerodromes. Let's see, you already talked about the private pilot thing. So there are some people out there that have established that and are working right now. So good for them, kudos to those guys. I know a few of them here in Hawaii, I know a few of them on the mainland. There are also a lot of people out there that are advertising as being a, you know, a mapping company or a drone operation without those, and they've been getting in trouble, I think, a little bit here and there. But it also, I think, creates a little bit of a distraction when somebody goes shopping for the data. They have a lot of options out there. So it's really, really hard for me to say, you know, what type of business plan is going to be the most sustainable. if you're going to try to get rich quick, I'm not really sure if this is the right thing for you.
Okay, this is like everything else in aviation. If you want to make $1 million in aviation, you start with 100 million.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna-
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. Soon we should know what it's going to look like for the UAV certification, what a UAV pilot's going to look like.
You know, and there's so much change going to come with the registration activity, registration requirement, which we talked about last Friday with our potential host. It didn't work out. That is going to be something as soon as maybe the middle of December. But people are going to have to start registering their UAVs and their drones.
Whose responsibility will that be? Is that going to be the responsibility of the person who buys it, or is it going to be the responsibility of the person who sells it?
My guess is it'll be the responsibility of the owner-operator. That's the current terminology in business today. And this will, the users, I mean, the retailers, if they want to be in business, are going to have to help their customers sign up. But more than likely, the owner-operator has to register. The question that goes through my mind is, what are you actually registering? For example, if we were buying this and registering this with a registration number on it and such, what if we change the motors? What if we change the payload? What if we cut it in half and add a piece to it, make
That's
it?
a good point. That's a good point. It kind of
Exactly.
takes away the do-it-yourself component. But at least I think, from what I'm gathering, is they just want a number on there that will be able to, if this ends up in somebody's window, they want to be able
I
to
think
point
it's
the finger at
tracking and
somebody.
responsibility and
Which is
liability. Right.
good. I kind of
Oh,
welcome
I
it.
think it's fantastic. I
We-
think it's so necessary.
Last Christmas or last holiday season, there was something like 250,000 units sold. It was probably predominantly Phantoms and such, DJI, ready to fly out of the box stuff. They're projecting over 1 million this.
And I think,
Christmas.
as we were saying,
Of little
last
things up in the
show,
air with people that, don't know really what they're doing.
And it gets worse in Hawaii. So everybody out there who's got a drone has to remember that in Hawaii, in particular, if the president is here, as he often is for Christmas time, out in Kailua,
No fly anywhere.
no fly. In
Yep.
the 30-mile radius around Honolulu, no fly.
Yep, they gate
And,
off the field, they patrol it, the whole ball of
But
wax.
what they don't gate off is Kailua Beach, and I'll tell you, there'll be DJI Phantom operators down there flying at Kailua Beach, ignoring or not aware of.
Well,
the
yeah, they're
standoff.
definitely not going to be aware of it. They're not looking
So-
for,
So there's a real requirement to get the registration system in place and then publicize it. And our show is a public service, and we'll certainly have, as soon as we have information, bring it up and let the people know what where they're going to
Absolutely, yeah,
register.
tweet in even, and if you have any questions on any of that stuff, and if we can't get to you on the show, maybe we can get you
Now,
the information.
as far as the business model is concerned, beyond the fundamentals that are required, an exemption, an authorization, and a pilot's certificate and such, at some point in time, all of these little individual operations are going to probably start consolidating into some kind of a franchise, I would think. Clearly, the wedding photographer people and the people who take just individual calendar shots or something like that, they'll probably always remain as artists and painters are today. They're very private and very specific in what they do, and that'll always be there. But as we get into the things like crop analysis and beach erosion and environmental species and things where there's a higher level of analysis required, it almost seems to me that some kind of a franchise-based operation to do the analysis that you, Chuck Devaney, have all the skills and knowledge to handle through the cloud or something like that would be a really big part of what this business is going to be.
Yeah, and there's more and more of those surfacing now.
Have you thought of starting one yourself?
Sure,
That'd be
absolutely.
a great, so we
Absolutely.
need someone to tweet in and be Chuck's partner
Yeah,
on this
like
deal.
right now, a lot of my clients, they don't really know what they want, so I've got a couple of different software data sets that I can share, or they can send me photos and I can stitch them together and kind of give them an idea of what they can expect based on the data that they're able to collect. But yeah, I think there's definitely some more room for a more like finite data analysis, cloud-based system.
For example, a quarry. A quarry would like to, I would think, not have to use its own people to do the flyover of the quarry and determine the value of the material stored in the piles, or how stable the walls are, how deep the holes are going to go. But if they had maybe their guy who could just do a morning flight at 8 o'clock in the morning every day and then feed it to you on the cloud,
Sure.
you could come back on a daily or weekly basis with an assessment of how that quarry is doing.
Exactly. We could definitely do that, no problem. A lot of those places already have control in place, so we don't have to actually go out and do our own survey.
cool.
They usually have
Okay.
a monument nearby that we can kind of tie into. But, you know, some of those larger entities as well, maybe only during certain times of the year are they even going out and doing the flying. And then during that time, is that aircraft going to sit on the shelf and collect dust? The batteries are going to go dead or, you know, deteriorate. Do they really even need their own drone program?
So there's the old question of make versus buy.
Yeah.
Do I make it myself and have my own local capability and my own training and such, or do I hire the whole service out?
Exactly. I get so many inquiries from so many people who are just so excited about the technology, and it's cool, it's fun, you're flying and you're doing some exciting stuff, but there's also, you know, a great deal of maintenance that goes into these, especially with the multi-rotors. I'm not really sure with the multi-rotors if they've been able to establish any sort of motor program, you know, fatigue program. So you don't really know exactly when that motor might
So you're
go
kind of
out.
favoring the buy position, that is, generate a service that has not only the analysis in the cloud, but also the equipment itself.
Exactly, yeah,
And,
we'll go out and fly it for you.
And so that would become a franchisable model where
Sure.
you could have the analysis centered in some common location and yet the distributed collection function wherever it might want
Yeah,
to be.
wherever it needs to be.
So once again, we need someone to get a hold of Chuck Devaney at,
ReadyToDrone.com.
okay, and let's turn this thing into a 501 or some other form of public service type analysis capability that can support under grant or contract the kind of work that's necessary in so many places in the world.
Yep.
As where you're going in a couple of weeks.
Yep, that's going to be predominantly forestry, so we're just going to be, you know, mapping areas of clear cut.
And
Pretty straightforward.
how do they do that today?
Probably a lot of GPS work. Go out and walk the area, establish a polygon, and just kind of quantify the area based on that. But there's a lot of them, and they're pretty patchy, and they're always changing. I think there's probably a great deal of illegal logging going on, so it might be relatively dangerous to put a man out there.
So, okay, but the man on the other end of a controller and the
Man on the
UAV
other end of a
flying.
controller, the things, you know, they don't worry about the beyond line of sight stuff there. Not yet, anyway.
How far beyond line, how are you gonna do on beyond line of sight? How far are you gonna be able to stretch? 5 miles maybe?
Maybe, that'll be the
Okay.
most. That'll be the most, but, you know, that'll be down the road when they're ready for that.
So you're gonna work this thing a bit at a time, right?
So this first effort is sort of going to be a test of concept, you know.
Okay.
They want proof of concept. So there's going to be a lot of eyes on this, especially from within. Bolivia,
And this
as
is a
you might
Bolivian
know-
government function, I suppose, that you're dealing with?
Yeah,
or-
yeah, it
okay.
is. I mean, they're working with an NGO. So the Bolivian government is not run by colonials or the mestizos. It's actually run by an indigenous president. So he's really, really for the indigenous people. So it's all about capacity building.
So this actually could turn into, then as the capacity needs are identified, you go back and generate another layer of capability on top of what's already been out there.
Exactly, but it's something that they need to be able to replicate on their own. So if the first thing we do is just find the surrounding areas that we know, then a lot of them don't have GIS skills as well, so they need to get a good understanding of the mapping component and how to extract that information and make a decision based upon it as well.
Cool. Well, Chuck, thanks so much for coming on the show again. And
Anytime,
we
Ted.
always use your time, and I mean, you were so gracious with your time to come on. It's been probably 20 times since the show began a couple of years ago.
Yeah, something like that,
And,
maybe 20.
Yeah, and at least another 20 in the next couple of years until that new host is picked here. And
So let me get this straight. You're leaving?
not yet.
Okay.
But I'm at some point in time. And so if you want to take it over, it's yours. You can jump in right now.
Okay.
But what I was wanting to do is keep bringing these issues up, as complicated as they are, keep bringing them up to the public so that people watching this or people who have ideas can come in. We've got programs at university that need support. We've got pushing this into a franchise operation that could be afford to be supported. And Hawaii can benefit from this, as well as Hawaii can benefit through your knowledge, the areas in the world you go to with this kind of technology and information. So we'll keep bringing this up time and time again, as repetitive as it may be, because it is a complex subject, hard to handle, and it's moving so fast.
Moving fast, and it's still very brand new.
Yeah, when we get back we're going to be at the Drone World Conference in a couple of weeks, and we'll be meeting with Hoot Gibson, who's the head of the FAA, on taking over from Jim Williams, and we'll get some more information, get you back on the show at that point in time.
Sounds fun.
Take what you've done in Bolivia, what we learned in California, bring it together and do the show again.
Yeah,
Chuck,
sounds good.
Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, always good to see
Okay.
you, Ted.
All right.
All right.
Take care. So, see you guys all next week.